Welcome to Read Your Comics. Today I'm looking at the Forgotten Superman story. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Daryl and I am the host of Read Your Comics. As we gear up towards James Gunn's reboot of the Superman movie franchise, I thought it'd be fun to keep looking at some Superman stories, both some popular ones and maybe some under the radar ones. This is one that flew under my radar until just recently. I bought a lot of DC Comics Presents and this one was in it. This is the last issue of DC Comics Presents, which was the Superman team-up book. There were 3 Superman titles at the time: Action Comics, Superman Volume 1, and DC Comics Presents. And while Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow is kind of considered the final pre-crisis Superman story, even though it's an imaginary what-if of sorts, this one is the pre-crisis Superman continuity, and it's kind of the last issue before the John Byrne Man of Steel series would reboot the whole thing. If you're interested in Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, I've already done a video on it with Justin from No Good Comics. Go check that out. It's in my Superman playlist, along with several other cool Superman books that you might be interested in. And before I completely jump into this, I gotta give a shout out to all the viewer support. All your likes, comments, and shares are much appreciated. If you're new to the channel or just haven't done so already, be sure to hit subscribe. I'll throw a graphic up right here. Go ahead and like the video too while you're at it. That way you don't forget later on. If you really hated the video, you can unlike it. So more about this one. I said I wasn't really aware of this issue, which is surprising because of the creative team that's on it. I would think would carry a little bit of weight in the pantheon of great comic teams, right? It's Steve Gerber and Rick Vietch working on this issue. Now, Steve Gerber did a miniseries on the Phantom Zone a few years before this. I did not know that existed till I got this issue and was confused by it saying the final chapter. So I was thinking, well, maybe the previous issue of this title. No, that's not it. A few years earlier, Steve Gerber with Gene Colan did a Phantom Zone miniseries. I don't have that. If I get it, I will do a video on it too. But that's why they're calling this the last chapter. Now, that miniseries, from what I understand, it wraps up. It's a complete miniseries. But he came back to some of those concepts one more time for this pre-crisis story. So let's go ahead and jump in. I dig this purple cover. I like the swirliness of Superman being grabbed by the Phantom Zone criminals here. Now, I'm mostly familiar with Zod from the Phantom Zone, and obviously the Superman movie, Superman 2, with Ursa and Non. Those characters really didn't appear in the comics, though, until after 2000, like 2005, 2006, something like that. So there were other Phantom Zone criminals that I just don't know much about. I learn about them in here, though. Most of the story actually takes place on Krypton. You've got Jor-El, who's having trouble sleeping. He's worried about the fate of Krypton. He knows something's up. You see Laura here, his wife, and she's pregnant. You can kind of see her bump there in the bed. So Jor-El is trying to figure out what he's going to do to preserve Krypton or his family with the impending doom that he's pretty sure of is happening to Krypton. So he gets up and he starts tinkering with his device here, which, if you're familiar with Superman lore altogether, this is the Phantom Zone projector, which also played a role in Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. I like this shot of the lab here. I like that you see him working on the rocket at the same time. He's got multiple projects going on here, but he doesn't feel like the rocket is quite ready, so he has a little bit more hope that the Phantom Zone projector will be something that he's able to use to preserve his family. At this point, they haven't stuck a bunch of criminals in it yet. So he, wanting to just explore, he turns it on himself. And I love this, reversed negative color holds you're getting here. The body parts and like shattered images as he feels like he's kind of being ripping, biting, piercing, and cold. It's cold as he's being plunged into the Phantom Zone. And then, man, this book just gets wild to me. For a Superman book, this seems like just kind of wacky. It's Steve Gerber, it's Rick Vietch, and it plays into both of those creators' strengths so well. So great, skeleton here with the color holds with the blue and the pink as he's being turned into a phantom in the Phantom Zone. And he goes through this long, description of what it's like, but there's also something not talking to him, but like a sensing that is only shown in the narration boxes of like he's getting this feeling of being spoken to, but he's not like hearing a voice. So here's his opening that he came in, and as he turns around, he wants to get out. And as he turns around, he says, "The aperture is closed behind me." So he feels trapped in the Phantom Zone. But he's able to like kind of be a ghost. And I found this funny. There's a few instances of this where this looks like a car battery, like an earthbound car battery with like typical earth connectors connecting the battery. So something came off from the battery that closed the power to the projector, and it's causing him to be stuck. So he goes and he can't like really talk to Laura, but in his like ghostly form, he's trying to get her attention somehow, and she's able to wake up. Look how his hand is like going through her chest. She wakes up and she notices him missing. So she gets up, and somehow she just kind of realizes like, oh, this is messed up. Here again, it's like just typical car battery connectors. I just find that kind of funny for this advanced civilization of Krypton. Great panel layout though, with the projector making this like kind of tic-tac-toe board going on right here. She's able to get it turned back on, opens the aperture, and he comes out. Of course, she's mad and slaps him like, "What are you doing? You could have been trapped in there forever if I hadn't thought about what you were up to." And he's just, saying he's sorry, and like he has to think of a way to save Krypton, if not the whole planet, then just her and the baby. And they kind of leave it at that, but he comes up with this idea that this projector can be used to as a place to put criminals. And so now we've got this executioner who we jump into his mind, actually, not his mind, but like his narration as he goes through all the criminals that he is trapping in the Phantom Zone. And there's ones I've never heard of before. This one in particular, though, is probably the closest to Ursa, although I looked her up. Her name is Feora, I believe is the way you would say it. And she's like a serial killer. And she is convicted of killing like 30 some odd men, almost like in like a concentration camp. She has no empathy for life. She is a true villain. And there's speculation that maybe Ursa was based off of her, but also she came out in the comics around the same time the movie was in production. So it's probably just coincidence that they were doing that. The Phantom Zone obviously existed before those movies, and so did Zod. But Ursa and Nod were new to the movie. Anyway, and it goes through all of these different villains, and it gives you like a quick recap and interesting panel layouts throughout. We get to this Zod page, and man, he was using these more or less bizarros. They called them inorganisms. But great, man, I love the panel layouts and the Phantom Zone when they put her in it here. All of this. This is a really great issue from an artistic standpoint. You got this guy who is some kind of like sorcerer of some sort being put in the Phantom Zone. So quite a few Kryptonian baddies were being trapped in there. It was more than just the three that are most commonly referred to. And Zod gets like 2 pages because he's the biggest bad of the Kryptonian villains. Then we get this character who I think is the cousin of Jor-El, if I'm not mistaken, and Jor-El has to like send him in directly. In fact, that's what this narration is. The executioner says that Jor-El took it upon himself to send him in. And I love this scene that says like, he's like, Jor-El, where does he go? And this look on Jor-El's face is just total like apathy, weariness. And he just says, to a place where they can harm no one and no harm will come to them. His eyes scared me half to death. He looked like he hadn't had a decent night's sleep in a year. And so at this point, I guess little Kal-El is born. He's just a baby. Jor-El really knows what's up. He knows that the planet is in dire straits. Look at these crazy pages. Look at this madness. I mean, this is what Rick Vietch would be doing in Swamp Thing, I guess, about this time. And I mean, it's just insane. That's why I'm like, this is an underrated issue. Like, if you just want some like bonkers kind of well, it's a Krypton story, more or less. Superman does show up later, but for the most part, it's a Krypton story. Lots of just description of what it's like to be in the Phantom Zone. Like they're seeing galaxies upon galaxies and kind of becoming one with it, or they're creating this thing in the middle that is almost like a manifestation of the Phantom Zone itself. And it creates this crystalline thing out in space that they're kind of trapped in. Some of this was a little confusing to me. I think I was just getting lost in like the art form here. But you have this like heart-shaped crystal that is also like containing the essence of all of these villains. And it's kind of becoming self-aware, but it's also being trained by these villains at the same time. You got look at Zod just contemplating. Zod is calculating, he's contemplative about how they can possibly escape, where the others are just raging. Then they're able to try to exert some influence on Jor-El, or they're trying to anyway, and he figures out that it's because of the Phantom Zone projector, and what he suggests is that, well, the Science Council suggests that they just put it on a rocket and shoot it off into space. So they do that. They send the Phantom Zone projector and the criminals and everything just off Krypton, just get it away from us, because these villains are able to exert some influence in their phantom forms outside of the zone. Then we end up on this other planet where there's these like Kryptonian, I guess, immigrants, you would say, that are in some sort of cult. It gets wilder and wilder, and they're using their power too, which is also aggravating Krypton, which eventually leads to Krypton exploding. Great panel here of the explosion of Krypton. There goes baby Kal-El being sent off, so you kind of get a little bit of Superman origin even in this. Back on this other planet, this guy's face is like melting and stuff. I mean, this is just bonkers stuff. Now, my understanding is this guy's first appearance was in that Phantom Zone miniseries that I have not read. And he wants to get into the Phantom Zone and kind of help. Bizarro shows up. The Phantom Zone is involved in the Bizarro thing. And much like in Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, Bizarro kind of does like a suicide mission here. Instead of shooting his baby into space, he blasts it into the core of the planet. Mxyzptlk, meanwhile, is being tried for all of his shenanigans. Mxyzptlk was also in Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. So we're kind of getting a lot of the same elements just being brought into this for the final issue. But in this case, Mxyzptlk's being contacted by that occult leader, that, kind of Kryptonian occult leader, and he's going to attach this Phantom Zone crystal thing to Mxyzptlk, who is escaping from his own prison in the fifth dimension and coming out to wreak more havoc. So this is almost like the Luthor Brainiac combo from Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, but this time it's Ptolek and the Phantom Zone. Here Bizarro's head arrives, and here's where he says, "Me fall through space till little bald man bring to earth." He's talking about Mxyzptlk here. And this is kind of where it wraps up with Superman. This is Superman's big appearance in the issue. So the Mxyzptlk Phantom Zone kind of combo are coming to Earth. And he's going to drop this giant kryptonite asteroid on the ground, which of course would cause like an extinction level event. Superman can't let that happen. I mean, all of this panel is like classic looking Superman. The changing, flying up. I mean, look at these faces of anguish as he rushes towards the kryptonite meteor and smashes it. And chunks of kryptonite fall all down on the ground. Look at that face. And it looks like bodies falling out of the sky and stuff. It's wild. Wild stuff, right? Kryptonite chunks just all over the city. And he's saying that that meteor was actually a piece of Krypton called Argo City, and that's what those bodies, I guess, are dead Kryptonians falling from the sky. Not exactly sure what's going on here, but Superman falls, and it looks like he's just dying. When all of a sudden, this character whose name is Thule Carr. He's the like Kryptonian occult guy who's kind of behind all this. And he does something to call Mxyzptlk back out to the self. Now, this whole stuff, all this like narrated dialogue and stuff, it reminds me of the Center from The New Frontier. I don't think that's exactly what Darwin Cook was probably going for, but it's similar to that. It's like this being who's kind of coming to self-awareness, kind of thinks everything is impure in a way. It's one of those like cerebral things that goes beyond what comprehension. It goes beyond comprehension. And it shatters between him and Mxyzptlk, allowing the criminals to get out. Now, there's this one sorcerer from Krypton who's getting with the occult guy here, and they're still trying to bring the self, the manifestation of the Phantom Zone, not to heal, but like really trying to take it to the next level. It's like they just kind of want it to ascend to whatever it's supposed to ascend to, whereas the Kryptonian criminals, they fly on down to Earth. Now, here's why I'm saying it was confusing, because last we saw Superman, he looked like he was dying of kryptonite from Earth, but now he's on the moon. And he says he's been out for hours or days. He's not even sure. And as he looks back, he just sees green death on Earth. And he uses his supervision and sees Zod just, terrorizing the Earth all over. And he goes off. I love a rampaging Superman. And he goes off, and he's had enough. He goes down and just really goes after Zod, destroying Washington, D.C. There goes the Lincoln Monument. Here comes the murderous Kryptonian female villain. Mxyzptlk then reemerges from the self. It's like he's become one with it and is controlling it now. And for some reason, he decides he's going to collect all the Kryptonian villains again and put them back into their Phantom Zone place, including, what's his name? Thulzar. And he plans to torment him. And then he says he might go back to his own dimension and just become the supreme being again. And he's just, poof, gone. Wait, I still don't understand. And it looks like I'm never going to. Whatever happened, whatever he's become, imp or godling, he gets the last laugh after all. So, kind of a confusing end, and maybe it would make more sense if I actually read that Phantom Zone miniseries. I don't know. I just think this is just a wild kind of compliment to whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow. I mean, it's got a good creative team on it. I love the art in it. The story is just completely out there and bonkers for a Superman story. I don't ever think of all this death and mayhem in Superman, but these final issues between the Alan Moore story and this one, maybe I don't give pre-crisis Superman enough credit for its sophistication. That's all I got for this one. Until next time, read your comics. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed my breakdown of this issue, you can support the channel by hitting subscribe. It costs you nothing and helps other comic fans find the channel. You can also visit readyourcomics.com for cool merch, like this. Read Your Comics isn't just a brand, it's a mantra. And when you wear a Read Your Comics shirt, you are helping spread the word. For more classic comics conversation, be sure to follow me on Instagram at read.your.comics. And if you're still here, why not watch one of my older videos? Here or here.